Today, we're digging into a really fascinating and, pretty provocative article. It imagines this huge shift in global power, proposing a brand new institution led by a very familiar face, and it's designed to completely sidestep the old way of doing things. So let's break down this whole proposal and what the source claims are its massive implications.
So the article kicks things off with a huge question, one that really gets right to the point. What if the United Nations was just replaced? I mean, think about that. The cornerstone of diplomacy for almost 80 years. It's a really bold way to start, and it sets the stage for an equally bold idea. So why even ask a question like that? Well, according to the author, the current system, the one built right after World War II, it's just plain broken. The article describes it as being completely paralyzed by gridlock, by vetoes, by endless talking, making it pretty useless when a real crisis hits. And that is the core problem that the author says needs a radical solution. Okay, so let's dive into the first big point from the source material. It's takedown of the current world order. The author's argument is basically that the very institutions that were designed to create peace, like the UN Security Council, have now become the biggest roadblocks to peace, mostly because of things like the veto power held by the permanent members. And here's the proposed solution. It's called the Board of Peace. The article presents this as a successor to the UN, at least when it comes to dealing with really high-stakes conflicts. It's designed from the ground up to be totally different, prioritizing one thing above all else: action. The article points out a really specific legal term that's apparently used to describe the board, sui generis. It's a Latin phrase, and it basically means in a class of its own. The source says legal scholars use this because the board doesn't really fit any existing box. It's not a peacekeeping mission, it's not a normal international body, it's presented as something totally new.
All right, so now let's get into the guts of the proposal itself, the Board of Peace. We're going to look at how the source material actually lays out its structure and what parts of its design are meant to make it so fundamentally different from the UN. So, according to the article, the board is built on a few key ideas to avoid the failures of the past. First off, all the authority is centered on one person, Chairman Trump. The whole idea is to have a clear, single point of leadership. Second, and this is huge, there's no veto power for members. This is aimed squarely at the gridlock we always see in the UN Security Council. And finally, if you want a permanent seat at the table, you have to make a huge financial commitment. We're talking over $1 billion to make sure, as the author puts it, that everyone has skin in the game. And who is actually in this new club? Well, the source lists 27 founding nations, and together they represent about 2.8 billion people. It's a pretty diverse group, too. You've got key Gulf states footing a lot of the bill, Central Asian powers, and even a few European countries, like Hungary, that are breaking away from the rest of the continent. The author uses this coalition to make a key point, that America can still build new global institutions, even if its traditional allies in Western Europe don't want to play along. So, the board's first proposed mission? It's incredibly ambitious. The article presents it as the ultimate test case, a way to prove that this model can work: the complete reconstruction of Gaza. And the amount of money we're talking about here is just massive. The source lays out a plan for infrastructure investment that would be more than $25 billion. It's framed not just as, rebuilding things, but as a complete transformation of the entire society. And this isn't just some vague idea. The article actually lays out a clear, step-by-step plan. The whole reconstruction would happen in phases, starting with one area, Rafah, as a kind of demonstration city. The idea is that each successful phase proves the concept works before they move on to the next one. It's a sequential rollout of this much bigger vision. The engine that's supposed to power all this is something the document calls the Great Trust. It's a proposed 10-year US-led operation, and the goal is incredibly audacious: to build 6 to 8 brand new cities and turn the area into a high-tech hub and a luxury tourist spot, calling it the Riviera of the Middle East. The whole thing would be paid for by Gulf wealth and private investment, and it would offer incentives like cash and new homes for residents to voluntarily move. Okay, so one of the biggest geopolitical fallouts described in the article is what it calls the Great Refusal. Because while this new coalition is coming together, America's traditional allies in Europe are, for the most part, on the outside looking in. This chart from the article really lays out what it sees as a total clash of philosophies. On one hand, you have the European approach, which is all about getting consensus, talking things through, and working within the old UN system. On the other hand, you have the Board of Peace, which is built for decisive action, for speed, and for just bypassing all that gridlock. It's basically capability versus process. The article takes this quote from the French foreign minister and offers its own interpretation. The author suggests that this opposition isn't just about principles, it's about France wanting to protect its most valuable diplomatic card, its permanent veto power on the UN Security Council, a power that, in this new system, would be totally irrelevant. And it's not just France. The source also brings up a leaked analysis from the EU's foreign policy group, which reportedly says that the board's design, putting so much power in one chairman, goes against the EU's core principles. Again, the author frames this as Europe choosing procedure, even if that procedure has led to nothing getting done. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The article points out this weird split happening in Europe between what governments are doing officially and what powerful individuals are doing on their own. For example, the UK government officially said no thanks to joining the board Metabest. But then, former Prime Minister Tony Blair apparently joined its executive board anyway in a private capacity. The author suggests this could be part of a bigger trend where powerful elites are starting to operate outside their own governments to align with new centers of power. From here, the article kind of moves into full-on speculation mode, really exploring the broader what-ifs and where this could all be headed. It frames this whole thing as America's next great pioneering moment. The author starts connecting some dots to speculate about where the board's headquarters might end up. It lays out this timeline, pointing out that just weeks before Albania's parliament votes to join the board, Jared Kushner, one of its executives, gets approval to build a huge resort on Albania's Sazan Island. The timing is presented as, well, maybe not a coincidence. So why this tiny island in Albania? The author builds a speculative case around a few key points. 1, it's a strategic spot inside a NATO country. 2, it's got amazing security already built in, thousands of old Soviet-era bunkers. And 3, and this is the big one, the author says you just have to follow the money. The same Gulf funds that are reportedly backing the board are also backing Kushner's private fund and this new resort. It's all connected. This quote right here really sums up the author's entire argument. The idea is that the Board of Peace isn't just some new committee. It represents the moment America proved it could build its own institutions and act on the world stage without needing a permission slip from its traditional European allies. It could be a fundamental break from the alliances of the last 80 years. And in the end, the article circles all the way back to this powerful metaphor. It frames the entire project in the tradition of America's pioneering spirit. You know, like exploring the West or going to the moon. It's about building something that's never been seen before and then inviting the rest of the world to either get on board or get left behind. And so, after all that, this explainer leaves us right back at the central question the source material poses. Is this vision a bold new model for getting peace in places where the old system has failed? Or is it a blueprint for a new kind of concentrated, unchecked power that operates completely outside of international law? The source has laid out its case, and now the implications are yours to think about.